They say he who seeks revenge should dig 2 graves. I don't really understand that, honestly. What if you want to kill more than 2 people? What if you use bombs or something and there's nothing left of your quarry to bury? Seems pointless to dig those holes now. Time spent digging holes is time not taking revenge. There are 2 major conflicting ideals that gestate when talking about revenge, and that's the threshold between revenge and justice. But it can be difficult to see where that threshold is. Justice and revenge aren't really a scale or a binary, it's just circumstantial. When something happens that commands a desire for retribution, our moral fibre begins to be tested. We all hopefully believe ourselves to be good people, but how sure can we be? When unfair cards are dealt, when our spirit begins to be chipped away at, how sure can you be that you'll hold on to your conviction? That you'll stay true to your morals and ideals? That you'll remain a good person? Maria no Danzai, or Lady Maria's Confession, is a story about revenge and guilt, the clash between people who feel too much and people who don't feel enough. It shows how guilt settles in the innocent and corrupts them, while the ones who are doing the damage don't really seem to care. Maria no Danzai is one of those uncommon collaboration manga. The art is done by Kamejima Junto, who as far as I can tell has done nothing before this, with the story being done by one Kazuki, which I'm assuming is a pen name. Kazuki before did a couple of short-lived romance manga, storyboarding one of them and being the sole creator of another. Kind of a jump, isn't it, from light comedy romance to high nightmare romance? Kazuki, what is love to you? In my Bear Like Jr. tells me I love you every day, it's pretty self-explanatory. But what is it in Maria no Danzai? Is it even a story about love? In a strange way, it is. It's the kind of love that makes you or breaks you. The kind of love that would send you down a dark path that you wouldn't even go with a gun. Because you just really want to get your hands dirty. The kind of love that makes you forget what's real. The story begins with the idea that the depth of a person is only as far as what you can see. And what do you see when you really look at a person? Their clothes, the skin on their face and hands, or maybe their arms if they're not wearing sleeves. Maria's face is plain, her hands are fidgety, and her clothes are baggy. Bullied as a child, she grew up into a timid and shy woman. She reminds me of a pile of laundry. She has about as much charisma as one too. Nevertheless, she enjoys being that person, because under those clothes are massive amounts of love for her family. She has a kind son with a bright future, and a cool detective husband who has 2 functioning eyes. And that's all she needs, that's all she is. That love for her family is woven so deep into the furthest layer of her skin, that if you plucked at it, she'd just completely unravel. But before you get the horns, you've gotta mess with the bull. Bullies, that is, and Mary's son Kiritaka is subject to some comically evil levels of bullying by a group of teens who have their fingers in so many illegal activities. I'm surprised they still have hands. During the day they're schoolyard bullies, but at night they're working with local gangs to extort people for money. They have ties to the Yakuza, and one of them secretly controls the police. As far as punishments go, they're practically untouchable. But if you already live outside the bounds of the legal system, being a schoolyard bully just seems a bit unnecessary. Nevertheless, they don't see it that way, and they wreak havoc on the school, especially Kiritaka. His nobility and willingness to stand up for himself and others being particularly irksome to one Okaya, the charismatic and deeply disturbed de facto leader of the school bullies. Kiritaka's face was strong, kind, and clean, but under all of those clothes were bruises and broken bones. But the smile on his mother's face would knit those right up, so he endured as long as he could, until a late-night rendezvous, topped with blackmail, sent him over the edge, and straight into the path of a truck. A truck that showed us that under everything that makes you who you are, all of us are just the same shade of red. A lesson that a mother like Mary could have gone her whole life without knowing. But before we get into the hot mum revenge story, it's important to understand that this is pretty much just torture porn. To really drill into you that these kids, tweens, deserve what's coming to them, they do some pretty comically evil stuff. And I say comically, but that doesn't mean it's funny. It's a little bit funny. One thematic stitching that's really hard not to pick out with stories like this is shedding skin. In the beginning, you're introduced to a character and shown who they are and where their priorities lie, only for then for some major life-changing incident to occur and effectively kill them. Everything that we're taught about them peels back, and what remains is effectively someone completely new. Mary sees the death of her son as the worst failure she could have committed as a mother. I'm not gonna lie. Certainly up there. The guilt she must have felt only realizing the pain her son was going through after holding his viscera must have weighed so heavily on her. This moment was pretty much the death of the woman she was. But instead of letting it outright kill her, she unraveled and turned into something new. Mary enacted a plan for the ultimate hot mum revenge. The first step was to divorce her cool detective husband, who has 2 functioning eyes, and then vanish from the public eye. During this time, she would revert back to her maiden name and undergo drastic plastic surgery, her plain soft features becoming more sharp and angled ones. You could grate a cheese wheel on those cheekbones, with the wax still on. Her meek demeanor now refined into a cool and stylish confidence. Now, she wasn't just a mum, but a hot mum, taking a very hands-on approach to getting the job at the high school the bullies attend. She was ready to channel all of that grief into revenge against a bunch of teenagers. Imagine being 35 and beefing with teens, like, just tell their parents, like, what are you doing? Give them detention, give them extra homework, get their Roblox banned. I don't know what kids like. But I guess that's not an option, so the only sensible alternative would be to learn everything she could about them, track all of their movements, and engrave into her mind how they victimized her son, and spend hours and hours creating semi-ironic death traps to place them in. She taught herself to smile just like them, so they can see the same face they jeered at her son with, right before they depart this mortal coil. All to teach those kids a lesson that the so-called education system won't. That inside, we're all just the same shade of red. The only thing that remains of her old self being the love of her son. Which goes into what I would say Mama Voorhees levels of obsession, complete with the mangled ghost corpse of her son, telling her who deserves her divine retribution. All the while, Mary pushes down her own feelings, as her actions begin to disgust herself. Still, everyone adores her. She is revered as an angel at her school. More than a person, she acts as an ever-present force here to protect the weak, pushing the victimized into her bosom and sponging up all their fear and pain. She acts swiftly and violently on their behalf. As she begins picking off these kids, things improve. The school is happier. The future is brighter. She is showered with love and admiration. And the best thing is, she's getting away with it. No one is suspecting her. Well, no one important. Just 2 or 3 people might have a suspicion, but there's no solid evidence. They're not important, because someone has to do something about all of this injustice. Someone needs to help. Someone needs to show all the villains of this world that they can't get away with it any longer. They need to know that the Lady Maria is watching. But she isn't the only one who is, because behind Mary's eyes, the old Mary is still there. She's helplessly looking on as she begins to recognize herself less and less, and just look at the disdain Mary has for her past self, scorning and belittling this lady as a weak coward who couldn't protect her son and isn't strong enough to do what's necessary. Bitch, that's you. That person is you. The same hands that held your child are the same that are killing people. And moments like this always hit me. I guess I'm just susceptible to them. Seeing a character who at least knew who they were be hit with the cold reality of what they've become. Wanting to scrub away all of that dirt and shame, put on those old glasses and find some kind of semblance of normalcy. Yes, that was a reference to Metamorphosis. And that's the feeling I get when reading Maria no Danzai. It's the story of people not quite accepting who they are. Once Mary successfully captures a bully, she places them in these elaborate jigsaw-style traps. And like Jigsaw, they're given a chance for them to understand what kind of person they are, realize the pain that they've caused, and go free. And time again, you see these people get so close to understanding what kind of person they are, and each time they never quite get there, because they'd rather die than confront the reality of who they are. The bullies, who are honestly nothing more than fodder, do have a surprising amount of depth to their character, like Punchman Kinokawa, who, despite all of his rage and proclivity for unreasonable violence, really cares about his friends and will go to any length to protect them. We see him express sadness and frustration when he realizes his group is being picked off, and how helpless he feels to stop it. But the real standout to me was Shikimi Kurumi. For lack of a better term, she's a mean girl who uses her dangerous feminine charm to entice lonely men and extort them for cash. Lest they be placed on some kind of naughty list for men. Santa's list. Mary ties Shikimi up and dangles her over a pit. And yeah, she's in her underwear. Look, it comes with the territory. You grow potatoes, you're gonna eat a lot of fries. That analogy doesn't actually... This pit is only deep enough to break her bones, ensuring that she is still alive when a collection of insectoids at the bottom devour her. Should she fall in, of course. But her task is simple. She has 3 hours to call one person to ask them to come and rescue her, as long as she's vague about her current predicament. She briefly deliberates on who is most likely to respond, and eventually she settles on Okaya, whom she is infatuated with. She thinks if anyone would come and save her, it would be him because, of course, they're friends. They know everything about each other. They hang out all the time. She is, of course, going to grow up and become his wife. First, she uses her silver tongue to get a SIM card, and then gets ready to call for help. And just before she sends the message to be rescued and spells certain doom for Maria, Shikimi looks at the text exchange between herself and Okaya and notices how one-sided it is. The two of them have never actually had a conversation. Her feelings for him had overvalued herself in his eyes, and then the reality that she refuses to acknowledge crawls up her and sinks its forciples into her. That Oyaku doesn't care. Her friends don't care. There's no one coming to save her. There's a very real chance that Okaya will just ignore her message, like he always does. There's a chance that all of her friends will ignore her message, and she doesn't want to face that reality, so she doubles down and refuses to acknowledge that she's always been alone. The fear that the world around you is playing some sick joke that you're not a part of is not something you always see the villain have to confront. And I know that these are horrible people who ideologically conflict with the norm, but Maria no Danzai does a very, very simple trick to make you almost feel sorry for these people. Shikimi, yes, spends most of her time being horrible to people, extorting money, fawning over guys who don't like her, pretty normal teenage girl stuff. But she also likes watching videos of pets, so she likes animals. Her favourite subjects are language and geography, which might imply that she wants to travel the world at some point. Yeah, Kinagawa has uncontrollable anger issues, but he likes pro wrestling and writing his own raps, and in the future he wants to open a company or a shop and help his parents out. So he does care about his family. These characters have been dipped into the pool of humanity, and it reminds you that despite all their heavy flaws, they are kids who have normal likes and dislikes and hopes for the future. To me, there's something really pitiful and tragic about learning this. The best villains, the ones that really stick with you, are the ones that you can see as a person, who have those elements of normalcy or something recognizable and relatable under all that evil. It makes me wonder that if you peeled back all the hatred, you'd find a weeping child who understands who they've become. Or maybe you'd just find Red. A similar thing happens in Yukiko Atsuji's Another. And to avoid spoiling anything, and I've already made a video on it, just know that this girl here, Izumi Akazawa, likes dinosaurs. And I appreciate that detail. It gives weight to these characters' death. When Shikimi was falling down that pit to be chewed up by centipedes, it makes me wonder, at that point, maybe she just really wished she was at home, watching videos of cats. It's a massive improvement over more conventional revenge-based stories. Take, for instance, Brutal by Kogeke with Izaro Ryu doing the art. Brutal's world is black and white. If we were to try to make some strange cooking allegory, Brutal would be two ingredients: evil people and a detective with an easily digestible notion of justice. Chapter by chapter, morally reprehensible people are introduced. They do something we can all agree is at least shitty, and then Detective Hikori Dan comes along and turns them into a clay pot. Not kidding, by the way. But the sheer amount of people Detective Dan gets through means that everyone blurs together. No one particularly stands out because they're not people. They're squishy pincushions, disposable outlets for your own frustrations. Because in our world, injustice runs so rampant, and it's nice to see the guilty being punished, even if it is just fictional. But I don't remember anyone, so nothing really sticks with me. You might not sympathise with the people Mary disposes of, and I'm not trying to make you. Nor am I saying Brutal is bad. It's exactly what it intends to be. Messy fun, and it does that really well. I just want to say I like how Maria no Danzai is trying to at least be a little nuanced with its characters. It would be simple to make a story about a hot mum taking revenge while being sexy. But it decided instead to force you to look at the most awful 16-year-old in the world cry because he misses his friends. And I think it's a shame that the first thing people will see when they look at Maria no Danzai is a hot mum revenge story, because there's introspection to be found here. It's showing how people can ruin their lives because of things they push down. And no matter how far it is pushed down, it'll still be there, staring right back up at you, waiting to be noticed. Don't worry, Mary. I see you. And I'll make sure they will too. I'll make sure no one ever hurts you again. Also, the mum's hot, and if that's not worth a read, I don't know what is.